What would you do if your ex-husband purposely drove through a puddle just to splash mud all over you? You can almost feel the disrespect, right? Standing on the street, soaking wet, humiliated by the same man who once promised to love you. But that's not even the craziest part. The real twist is he has no idea that the woman he just drenched in dirty water is now married into the family that controls his entire business empire. And what happened next proved something important. Sometimes karma doesn't just knock, it kicks the whole door down on live TV. This is the story of how the billionaire who splashed mud ended up begging for forgiveness in front of the entire country. Thank you so much for stopping by, and welcome to Real Incredible Stories. Please take a second to like this video, it really helps the channel grow. And tell us where you're watching from. We appreciate your support more than you know. Her name was Emma Clark. She was 28, and she had been divorced from Richard Blackwell for 8 months. Richard was a billionaire real estate mogul, CEO of Blackwell Estates, owner of malls, office buildings, and luxury apartments across London. During their marriage, Richard treated Emma terribly. He used to mock her job as a primary school teacher. "You make what, 30 grand a year? I spend that on watches," he'd say. At parties, he'd introduce her as my simple wife who teaches little kids. After 5 years of this disrespect, Emma filed for divorce. Richard didn't even fight it. "Good riddance," he'd said. "I need someone who actually matches my status." Emma took nothing in the divorce except her personal belongings. She just wanted her peace back. She moved into a small flat, went back to teaching full-time, and focused on healing. What Richard didn't know was that Emma had met someone new. At a charity gala for underprivileged schools, she met Alexander Sterling. A quiet, kind man who was genuinely interested in her work with children. They talked for hours. Alexander never mentioned who his father was. Emma never asked. She simply enjoyed being around someone who saw her as a human being, not an accessory. They dated for 6 months. Then one evening, Alexander finally told her the truth. "My father is Lawrence Sterling, the Prime Minister." Emma nearly dropped her wine glass. "The Prime Minister?" "Yes," he said nervously. "Does that change anything?" Emma thought for a moment. "Not unless you're about to start judging me for being a teacher." Alexander smiled. "I love that you're a teacher. It actually means something." 3 months later, they got engaged. The wedding was small and private. But the moment Emma became Emma Sterling, the Prime Minister's daughter-in-law, her entire life shifted. Security teams, media attention, high-profile events, and state dinners. She was suddenly part of one of the most powerful families in Britain. And still, Emma stayed humble. She kept teaching. She didn't show off her new life. Most people didn't even recognize her without the makeup and gowns she wore at formal events. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, Emma was walking home from the grocery store. She wore jeans, a raincoat, and sneakers. Her hair was tied in a ponytail. She looked like a normal woman carrying her weekly groceries. She was crossing the street when she heard a car engine rev. A black Bentley sped toward a massive puddle beside her. Emma barely had time to react before the car hit the puddle at full speed. A huge wave of dirty brown water, mixed with mud, oil, and trash, splashed all over her. It soaked her clothes, her hair, even her shopping bags. Emma stood there in shock, dripping from head to toe. The Bentley stopped. The window lowered. Richard Blackwell leaned out, laughing. "Oh my God. Emma, is that you?" Emma wiped mud from her eyes and looked at him. He was grinning like a child who just played a prank. "Richard," she said, her voice shaking with cold and anger. He looked her up and down. "Still shopping at Tesco? Still living that bargain bin life?" Some things never change. His passenger, a young woman in expensive sunglasses, laughed. "Richard, you're awful." "I know," he said proudly. He revved the engine. "See you around, Emma. Or maybe not. You're not exactly in my social circles anymore." He drove off, still laughing. Emma stood there humiliated, clothes ruined, groceries destroyed. People stared. Some took pictures. One person was recording everything. With shaking hands, she called Alexander. "Can you come get me?" Something happened. 20 minutes later, a black government vehicle pulled up. Alexander stepped out, and his face instantly hardened when he saw her covered in mud. What happened? Emma told him everything. Alexander's jaw tightened. His security team exchanged looks. "Do you know who did this?" "Yes," Emma said. "My ex-husband, Richard Blackwell." Alexander's expression turned icy. Give me everything on him. Right now. By that evening, the video was viral. Billionaire splashes mud on woman walking home. 10 million views. Comments calling Richard cruel, disgusting, heartless. Then someone recognized Emma. Hold on, that's Emma Sterling, the Prime Minister's daughter-in-law. The story exploded. Every major news outlet ran the headline. Billionaire property developer humiliates Prime Minister's daughter-in-law. Richard's phone blew up. His PR team, his board, his lawyers, all panicking. Richard, do you realize what you've done? His lawyer shouted. That's the Prime Minister's family. I didn't know, Richard said, sweating. She was my ex-wife. She was just a teacher. How was I supposed to know? She married into the Sterling family, the lawyer snapped. That doesn't matter. The video is everywhere. You need to fix this now. The next morning, he got a call from the Prime Minister's office. Not a request, a command. Mr. Blackwell, you will appear on BBC News at 8 p.m. tonight. You will publicly apologize to Mrs. Emma Sterling. This is not optional. Richard tried to argue. I'll release a written statement. That is not enough. The Prime Minister wants a live televised apology. If you refuse, there will be consequences. His lawyers didn't sugarcoat it. Do it. You embarrass them publicly. They want a public apology. That night, Richard sat in a BBC studio, sweating under the lights. The host introduced him. Mr. Blackwell is here to address an incident involving Emma Sterling. Richard's voice trembled. I want to publicly apologize to Emma Sterling for my behavior yesterday. I acted disrespectfully. I'm very sorry. Can you explain exactly what you did? The host asked. Richard's face burned. I deliberately drove through a puddle to splash her with mud. It was cruel. It was wrong. And you knew who she was? The host asked. I knew she was my ex-wife. I didn't know she was part of the Prime Minister's family now. Would it have been okay if she wasn't? Richard had no answer. The interview was a disaster. Clips went viral. Billionaire apologizes for humiliating Prime Minister's daughter-in-law. Richard tried to defend himself, but everything he said made it worse. Social media erupted. Richard Blackwell is trash, trended worldwide. And the humiliation wasn't even close to over. The next morning, his CFO called. Richard, we have a serious problem. The Cabinet Office just froze all our government contracts. What? What? Ethics violations. Conduct unbecoming of a government contractor. Richard felt sick. How much money is frozen? £340 million. Every government contract his company held, frozen. Within 48 hours, 3 major banks called. With contracts frozen, his credit lines were collapsing. His company's stock crashed 24%. Investors were panicking. The board called an emergency meeting. Richard, this is a catastrophe. You need to step down. You can't fire me. We can and we will. You've cost this company hundreds of millions. You're a liability. Then came the final blow. The government's ethics review found several contract violations. All £340 million in contracts were terminated permanently. Today, Emma Sterling is still teaching. She and Alexander just welcomed their first child. She's loved by the public, the teacher who married into power but stayed humble. She's been featured on magazine covers, spoken about education reform, and started a foundation to support underserved schools. The Bible says in Galatians 6 verse 7, do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows. Richard sowed cruelty. He reaped disaster. Emma sowed humility. She reaped a kingdom. Stay humble, and when someone tries to embarrass you, let karma do its job. Sometimes it comes quietly. Sometimes it hits like a storm. Sometimes the person you humiliate is connected to people who can end your world twice. First publicly, then privately. Richard learned that lesson the hard way. What would you have done if you were in Emma's position? Let me know in the comments. And if this story touched you, hit subscribe and share it. Stay blessed.